Hello and welcome to busyworksbeats.com. Today I'm going to show you how to chop up some samples. Okay, so let's do it this way. I'm going to show you many ways to do the same exact thing. In FL Studio, there's so many ways to do one thing. It's really astonishing sometimes how crazy it can get. So let me do Edison first. Let me write this down. Whoa. Let me write this down so I don't forget. Let's start with Edison. We're going to move into Slice X, and then we're going to chop in the playlist. So 3 ways to do the same exact thing, and I'll give you quick little things about each. Excuse me. Let's open up the sample. First, go to your channel rack. I usually switch this to all because I don't like confusing myself. When this is switched to audio, it only shows you audio clips, meaning clips which are audio and not MIDI. So it can get confusing sometimes. So I switch it to all. Secondly, I'm going to open up the sample. This is a track I made. This isn't a record by anybody. We're going to right click, go to edit. And so let me give you a quick pointers about this. We go in depth about this in the sample series, which is free at busyworksbeats.com/sample. But I'm going to give you a gist of some techniques we go over. So firstly, I turn this arrow off, and that's because when we zoom in, I don't want the screen bobbing left and right. Okay, for example, if I zoom in and hit play, it's going to take me to the beginning of the song, and that gets annoying sometimes when we're trying to sample. So now when I zoom in with the arrow off and hit play, it doesn't reset. So that's a key function that will save a lot of frustration for you. So in Edison, some key places I look are going to be gaps in the audio. This isn't heavily mastered, or there's no vocal on it, so it's not really thickened out. But in other songs, you're going to see a lot of white area. It's going to fill up almost the whole screen sometimes. So you want to look for areas that are gappy, you know, areas that have groove in it, that have space, that have empty space. So for example, the beginning. And an easy way to tell that there's drums is if it's very pointy. You can usually determine that that's some drum element if it's very pointed, because drums have very sharp transients. So areas you want to look for are generally the intro has a lot of empty space. The bridge of a song, which is around 2/3 of the way through, has a lot of empty space, so like right about here somewhere. And the outro generally has a lot of space. But this song has a lot of space everywhere, so I can just zoom in here and just grab a point. Now, I don't want to go over everything about sampling because that will just take up too much time, and we go in depth about it, you know, piece by piece for you in the sample series. But for example, when you're chopping, you want to chop, you want to measure time as you're chopping. What a lot of people do is just chop a random section, and then they'll try to time stretch it later, and it's going to make your beat sound really offbeat. So what you want to do is get really good at timing. In short, turn on your metronome, go to a blank channel, whatever, and just count the metronome hits. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Every time I say 1, 2, 3, 4, that's called a beat. It's like a heartbeat, a pulse. And for every 4 beats, it's a bar in what's called 4/4 timing. There's also 3/4 timing, which you may see in a lot of samples since they're older records. But for the most part, as long as you can count the 4, you'll be good. So let's zoom in. Now, sometimes samples aren't locked into a grid. Sometimes it's just like free playing. So you have to be able to count, you know, going by your mind's measurement, and then be able to time stretch it later. There's so many nuances about sampling. That's why I consider it one of the highest art forms in music. So let's just count however many bars this is going to be. 1. So it looks like I didn't catch the downbeat. So what we want to look for is the downbeat, where we can start counting. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. But that seemed like it was in the middle of a bar somewhere. So let's let's roll back. Now this looks like a downbeat. 1, 2, wait, 1. Maybe that's not the downbeat. Let's go back even further. Now here's the downbeat. 1. Oh, another thing is we're going to change our snap to grid to snap to 0 crossing. That's important because in samples, you don't want to have clicks and pops. Clicks and pops occur when you don't have your phase at 0. But even though I found 0 crossing doesn't always give you a 0 spot. So sometimes you just got to zoom in manually and make sure that that's at the flat line or at 0. So let's back out a bit and let's start counting the music. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. And that's the 3rd bar, so we don't need the 3rd bar. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4, and okay, so now if you want to make it loop back, this is how you check if it's perfectly 4 bars, because there's no way to really tell where we ended. So I like to put it on loop mode. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, and just make sure it loops back proper. I can tell it looped back a little early, so that means I didn't grab enough of the signal. So I'm going to grab a little more of the portion. You can see it didn't land on a 0 phase position, however, and it took up, actually it did land on the 0 phase position, but it took up another piece of the next bar. So that might be an issue we have to resolve, even though it's so minute. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2, 2, 3, 4, and 1. You can see there's a little hiccup before we go back. And that's because the hiccup is from that little slice before the next bar. So what we can do here is go to snap to grid. And this is when you need to really resolve issues. Go to snap to samples. Then you want to pull this over manually so you don't grab the next piece of the next bar. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, and 1. Still a little too much of the tail end, so let's cut it off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, and 1. Still a little too much. Let's pull it back even further. You have to also remember this is like a groove that's grooved by hand. Now, we need to check the beginning just as much as we need to check the ending. So just because the ending seemed like it was a little bit long, it could be the beginning. In this case, it is. You can see I grabbed a little bit of the piece beforehand, but it's not going to be phase perfect. We can fix that. I'll show you a way to fix it. So don't worry about that. So that's why we're doing this by samples instead of snap to grid zero crossing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, and still doesn't loop back perfectly, but I think it's the groove of the sample. So I don't want to spend too much time on, going over the same thing. But let's say you wanted to, let's say you hear clicks and pops in your sample. Let's open up the new slice, and I kind of brushed over what I just did, didn't I? So in Edison, when you have the highlighted area, you can go to this drag copy sample selection and drag it into your channel rack, and it will become a new sample. So we have just the 2 bars of the track. So let's open that up. Let's right click. Let's go to edit. Okay. And now we can view the whole 2-bar section. So let's say at the end, we hear a little click. I'm going to show you how to prevent the click. So let's zoom in towards the end, left click it, highlight it, and go to fade out or declick out. That will create it will create a node, it's called. A 0 phase position. So we click that, and now it ends on a node, which is at 0 velocity, which will prevent the pop. Let's go to the very beginning of the sample. I don't usually do this on the beginning of stuff, however. So that's something you might want to go back and just resample. But let's say it happens in the beginning. Let me zoom in all the way and see what the issue is. So it seems like 2 sounds are overlapping. One's positive and one's neutral. So it's creating a, whoops. Oh, it's highlighting the end. I'm like, where's the sound coming from? I don't hear a click in the beginning. I think I do actually. But that would just be a matter of sampling. But let's say you wanted to create a fade out. I'm not sure if we can do a reverse fade out. Oh, we can do a fade in. Okay. So let's zoom all the way in. We only want to highlight the very microscopic section here. Just these 4 like micro samples, and go to fade in. So it took that positive value. Let me see if I can Control Z that. So you can physically see it taking it back to the 0 value. So if I click fade in, this positive value here will become 0. And now we don't have any phase issues. And that's important in physics terms. I don't want to get too geeky right now about phase. We go over that in our mixing academy. But it's important that we have those, fade ins and fade outs. But we don't want to fade the whole kick. We want to fade just that micro small little section. So now we have a cleaner sample. So now let's take that sample and import it into Slice X. So let's kind of multitask here. And then I think the last one is the playlist. Okay, so let's go into Slice X. And as this loads, okay, this is taking a while to load. Okay. Let's see here. Let's grab the sample. We're going to drag it inside of Slice X. So now Slice X maps every sample chop across the piano playlist based on the time of how it's being played. So if I hit play, it will play in real time, and it chops every transient, it's called, automatically in Slice X. That's why I love Slice X for drums, for example. It slices the transients really well. It's great for drum breaks. One of my favorite plugins when it comes to sampling, period. I mean, it's just like perfection. So enough praising it, I guess. Now what we can do in Slice X is take these samples out and make individual samples, so we can keep going further and further. So what I like to do in Slice X is just look at the main transients. And the main transients are going to be sounds that have points to them. Okay, so you're going to see points. Like this is a point. It's like a triangular shape. And that's where it puts the marker, right at the beginning of that point. And then we have another triangular shape. So it picks up on what's called transients. So this is not a transient, I don't believe. It might be a hi-hat. Let's see. What is it? Okay, it's a hi-hat. So it even picks up on the hi-hats. That's really cool. So it doesn't look like anything menial except maybe right here. This marker might not have anything. So that's nothing. So what I'm going to do is figure out what this part is. So that might be the transient for the chord. So let's delete that marker. Now, as you're deleting stuff, keep in mind that this will reroute the MIDI notes. And what I mean is if you have your own pattern already laid out and then you just delete a marker randomly, it will return to this kind of pre-made template. And to avoid that, you just hit Control Z and it will pull your MIDI back. So don't worry if it overlaps your MIDI. I know it's a very specific issue, but it'll happen at some time. So I'm just gonna leave this and let it assume that it let's assume that it chopped at the right spots. Let's go into the piano roll, and starting at middle C, if I hit Control A delete, I can now play each chop as if it were a drum pad. You can set up your drum machine or your drum what do they call them now? Your drum pads to play these notes as well. You just have to assign them to the right MIDI notes. And then we can play all the way up to Slice 16 on the keyboard. And this is how you come up with really cool things that generally you wouldn't think about when you're producing. Like this, I would have never considered putting those two. Where it goes dun dun, and then it goes dun. That's just a really cool combo. So I would have thought about that. And that's what sampling brings about. It brings about things that you naturally wouldn't do because it's so out of the box. So let's add those in as like a rhythm. Now there's a lot of things about Slice X, and we have a tutorial in the premium section at busyworksbeats.com. Just go into the premium area, load up the search function area, and then type in Slice X, and it should pop up. So here we have a rhythm. Let's slow down the BPM. We don't need it to be at 1000 BPM. Let's go to 84, and I'm just going to create a quick little, chop section. Now the thing about the chops in the piano roll is real drums aren't synchronized to the piano roll. So if you're programming with these blocks, you just have to remember it's not going to sound. I'm trying to look for a snare. Do I have a snare? I don't have a snare. Okay, so that's different. But when you program it to the grid, it's not going to sound humanized. So you need to give it that humanized feel. And to do that, we're going to go to Snap to Grid None, highlight a note, and just move it over to the left or the right a little bit. Now you can do that without actually using your mouse. You can hit Shift right or Shift left to do micro nudges. Okay, so that comes in handy. So let's figure out a cool little pattern. So I like this. And it also plays for however long the note lasts. So it goes. So it's really good for snares and kicks. You can cut them off early. Now this won't be the greatest rhythm because we didn't slice it. That's a weird. Let's not do that. Now I know this can be better, and also you can go even further. Sampling, there's so many aspects to it. Again, that's why we have the whole sample series for you. But I wanted to show you how to chop in time and how to use fade ins, fade outs. That's the most important thing. Putting the composition together is your own thing. I don't want to waste too much time on this because this is arbitrary. I like that. Dun, 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 dun. So I'm just being experimentative here. And notice the sample cut short, goes dun, 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 but if you drag it out, it's gonna play the whole sample. Or at least that amount of the sample. Now, I know this is super basic because we didn't chop anything in particular to make it a beat. We go over that, how to make sample beats, etc. in the sample series. But you can feel it's very dun, 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 very robotic. So go to snap to grid none and just slide those notes over to the right, hitting shift right, 1, 2, 3, 4. I usually do it in increments of 2 or 4. Okay, we can get, I don't want to make a sample beat because it's not going to turn out well with this chop. But I wanted to show you the techniques of chopping, importing into Slice X. And let's now sample into the playlist. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but it's the same technique as Edison. We're just going to slice with the playlist tools instead. So let's go to snap to grid. In this case, we're going to go to none because I like this to slice, at perfect spots. And by perfect, I just mean wherever I want versus some kind of snap to grid. So if you hit shift, left click and drag, you can slice vertically at each position. And it's just like slicing in Slice X, for example. And you can either make these unique as their own sample, or if you can click here and make it unique, so now that becomes its own sample. Now it doesn't make it a smaller sample, it just duplicates the whole sample and makes this strip treated. You can treat the strip differently. Okay, so it's not like it makes a hi-hat sample by itself. It's gonna make the whole thing, because really technically it's the whole thing. We're just shortening it to that little chop. So keep that in mind. And now you just rearrange it. I mean, when I'm sampling, it depends on what I'm sampling. I mean, if I record a guitar, I'll be chopping it, moving it around, putting it in different places. It's not always going to be, a science to it. But again, you can learn a lot more at busyworksbeats.com/sample. I don't want to keep wasting time going over stupid little stuff about sampling because we go through it in a lot more depth with a lot of more explanation. And I don't want to be so vague. So go to busyworksbeats.com/sample. Thanks for watching today. It's busyworksbeats.com.
Create complete compositions with comprehension. Master music theory. Visit busyworksbeats.com/music theory for your free bonuses and free music theory tutorials. Professional mixing secrets finally revealed. Get 3 free videos straight from the new Mixing Academy complete course package at busyworksbeats.com/mac. Want to learn how to make beats like the pros? Join now for free at busyworksbeats.com and learn the secrets of the pros.